Hey, fancy meeting you here. Today we're going to keep reading Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. We are on chapter 14. Let's see what happens to Minli and Dragon as they enter the forest. Minli and the dragon had sat in the clearing and made camp for the night. As the sun fell and the moon rose, the dragon showed her how he could make sparks by scratching his claws against a stone. And they built a small campfire. As Minli and the dragon made no moves to go farther into the forest, the monkeys had quieted down, but they still watched. There are plenty of peaches for all, Dragon said. Those monkeys don't have to be so greedy. Really? Minli asked. Yeah, Dragon said. The monkeys are so foolish. They just want more and more even when they don't need it. I have seen them refuse to let go of rotten mushrooms and fight over piles of mud. At those words, Minli sat up and her eyes flashed with quick thinking. Piles of mud. Suddenly, Minli remembered the two children fighting over their piles of mud as she had left her village. Instead of going inside for dinner, the children had clung to their pretend dishes of dirt. They were so foolish. Could the monkeys be that foolish? They were too selfish for trading or bribes. But maybe they were so greedy that they could be foolish enough to be tricked. Maybe if she... I'm going to make rice, Minli said abruptly. Oh, the dragon said. You must be hungry. Too bad we can't get you some peaches. It's not for me, Minli said, and she smiled mysteriously. It's for the monkeys. The monkeys? Dragon said. Why? If you mean it as a gift or as a way to bribe them, it won't work. They will take it and eat it, but they will not let you through. That is what I'm expecting, Minli said as she filled her pot with water and uncooked rice. She was bursting to tell Dragon her idea, but wasn't sure how much the monkeys understood of their words. She looked at him with sparkling eyes, but he only stared back blankly. You are? The dragon said. I don't understand. Don't worry, Minli said, and with her eagerness she felt like the water she was boiling. I think I know how we can pass the monkeys. The dragon watched as Minli stirred a big pot of rice. Through the rising steam, he could see the beady eyes of all the monkeys glittering through the branches like hundreds of diamonds as they watched as well. The monkeys are watching, he whispered to Minli. Good, she whispered back. I hope they are. When the rice was done, the pot was overflowing with snowy white rice. It was so heavy that to take it off the fire to cool, she had to ask the dragon to move it for her. Minli had the dragon place it very close to the trees where the monkeys were watching. Then, Minli tied her fishnet over the rice and pot. As Minli and Dragon turned away, they could hear the monkeys chattering. That fishnet will not stop the monkeys from taking the rice, the dragon said. It's tightly woven, but their hands will probably fit through. I know, Minli said as she put out the fire. Let's pretend that we think the rice is safe and we are letting it cool. Though puzzled, the dragon nodded. They placed themselves a far distance from the rice, yet still within sight, put out the fire and pretended to go to sleep. But Minli could not help peeking. Though she tried to lie still, she was filled with excitement. Would her plan work? Would the monkeys take the rice? In the bright light of the moon, the monkeys glanced slyly at them and stole over to the rice. The dragon was right. Just as he'd said, the fishnet could not keep the monkeys from the rice. Their slender hands slid through the holes of the fishnet and each grabbed 2 big fistfuls of rice. But as the monkeys tried to carry the rice away, the net caught them. The holes in the net were large enough for their empty hands to fit through, but not large enough for their full fists. The monkeys screamed and pulled, and Minli and the dragon no longer pretended to be asleep. They couldn't help laughing as they watched the monkeys struggling to punch the air and each other with their trapped fists. Minli quickly packed her things, and the monkeys screeched and shrieked as they passed. The heavy pot of rice shook as the monkeys fought violently to get free. But the fishnet was strong and well woven, and since the monkeys were too greedy to let go of the rice, Minli and the dragon entered the peach grove and continued through the forest. I can't wait to find out what happens, chapter 15. Ma and Ba sat in front of a small fire that Ba had built. Their disappointment was not having found Min Li. Their disappointment at not having found Min Li forced them to admit their exhaustion, and they had slept under the canopy of tree branches during the day, leaving their silver goldfish as a guardian. By the time they'd awakened, it was late afternoon, but neither of them made any attempt to move. Neither spoke, but both knew they were unsure whether to go forward or go back. While the sun burst into multicolored flames on the horizon, its last wave goodbye before surrendering to the night, Ma handed Ba a bowl of rice porridge. Neither of them spoke as they ate, both thinking about the goldfish man's words. Should they let Min Li try to change their fortune? Should they stop looking and, like the goldfish man said, trust her? Ba sighed. Trying to find Min Li is like trying to find the paper of happiness, Ba said aloud to himself. What paper of happiness? A voice said. Ba looked sharply around. Who had said that? He looked at Ma, but she continued to stir her porridge, obviously unaware. Ba shook his head. Perhaps his weariness was making him imagine things. Tell the story, old man. She's listening. The voice spoke again. She won't admit it, but she wants to hear it too. Ba looked around again. It seemed like the voice was coming from the goldfish. He looked closely at the bowl. Was it the firelight that made it glow like that? The fish stared back at him calmly, as if waiting. So Ba took a deep breath and began the story. Remember, there's stories inside of this story. This one's called The Story of the Paper of Happiness. Once a long, long time ago, a family grew famous for their happiness. It seemed odd that this would happen, but they were truly an unusual household. Even though aunts and uncles, cousins and grandchildren lived together, there was never a mean word or an unhappy noise. All of them were polite and thoughtful to each other. Even the chickens did not fight each other for food. It was said even the babies were born smiling. Stories of their happiness spread like seeds in the wind, sprouting and blooming everywhere, until finally even young Magistrate Tiger heard of them. Even though he had just begun his position, this was before his son was born, the bellowing, roaring magistrate was already called Magistrate Tiger. Impossible, he scoffed. The stories are made up. No family can be that happy. But even so, he was curious and sent someone to the family to observe. The person returned in awe. Your Magnificence, it is just as the stories say, he said. I observed the family for a full moon, and not one sad or angry word was even whispered. The adults are loving and faithful, the children are gracious and respectful, and all honor the grandfather with esteem that rivals the gods. Even the dogs don't bark, but wait patiently to be fed. The family circle is one of complete harmony. That's impossible, the magistrate said, astonished. But as he thought about it, the more he began to wonder. What was the secret this family had? They must have some magical charm or hidden knowledge, and this began to irritate him. He began to covet or be jealous of the family's happiness. I am the magistrate, he thought. If there is a secret to happiness, I should have it. So he called the person to him and presented him with an empty, heavily encrusted chest and a company of soldiers. Return to the family, Magistrate Tiger ordered, and tell them that I want the secret of their happiness put in this box. If they don't do so, have the soldiers destroy their home. He did as he was told. When the troop of soldiers surrounded the house, the family looked fearful. But when the magistrate's demand was announced, the grandfather smiled. That's easy enough, he said, and he had the trunk brought into the house and returned in moments. It's done. I put the secret of our happiness inside the box, he said, and you may take it. We hope it serves our magistrate well. The man was slightly surprised at the ease of his task, but could find no objection, So he turned the soldiers and the box around and began to travel back to the palace. He knew the magistrate would be impatient for his return, so the soldiers marched through the night with only the light of the moon to guide them. The treasure box, lying on a platform carried by 4 men, seemed to glow. However, as the ground grew rocky and steep, a sudden wind blew, like the mountain itself was yawning. One of the soldiers stumbled in the rising dust, and the box crashed to the ground. The lid of the box flew off, and, free like a butterfly, a single sheet of paper fluttered out. "Get it!" the man shouted at the soldiers. "Don't lose the secret!" But despite his yells, the paper seemed to be able to escape the soldiers' flailing arms. One soldier almost caught it, his very fingertips touching the page, but another sudden wind burst through the air and stole it away. Silently, the man and the soldiers watched the paper lift higher and higher in the night sky until it overlapped the moon and disappeared. He had no choice but to return to the palace with an empty box. As he relayed the story, Magistrate Tiger, not surprisingly, was enraged. "You lost it? It was a paper?" the magistrate roared. "What was on it?" "Your Magnificence," the man trembled, "as I felt the secret was for your eyes only, I did not read the paper before it was lost. However, it was in the air, and all I could see that there was a single line of words on it." "What did the line say?" the magistrate demanded. "I don't know, Magistrate," he said, "but there was one soldier who almost caught it and was closest to it. Perhaps he was able to read the line." So the soldier was called in, and very humbly did he bow. He was little more than a boy, and had only recently joined the magistrate's army from a small, poor, faraway village. "You," the magistrate said, "you were the only soldier close enough to the paper to read the line. What did it say?" The boy flushed, and his head touched the floor as he bowed again. "Great Magistrate, I am your poor servant," he said. "I was close enough to see the line on the page. However, I can't read. I don't know what the line said." Magistrate Tiger scowled with irritation, and the emissary and the soldier shivered. I did notice something," the soldier said. "What?" the magistrate demanded. "There was only one character on the page," the soldier said. "The line was one word written over and over again, many times." "One word?" the magistrate snarled, and his anger seemed to burn deep in his eyes. "One word is the secret to happiness? It was a trick! The family must have thought they could deceive me. Emissary, gather all of my troops. I, personally, will get the secret of happiness and punish that family of lowly dogs." So the next day, with Magistrate Tiger and his entire army prepared for destruction, the man led the way to the home of the happy family. But when they arrived, nothing was there. No house, no chickens or sheep, no family. Instead, there was only flat land, as if the whole home had been scooped from the earth. Magistrate Tiger scowled at the blank ground with rage and vowed to punish the family for their disrespect. But while he glared, the wind blew and covered him with a grayish-green dust. As he stood like a green, powdered statue, he felt as if the sky were laughing at him. "So, I think Min Li, like the secret word in the paper of happiness," Ba said. "It's not meant to be found." He glanced at Ma, and while she did not meet his gaze, she made no objection either. "And tomorrow," Ba continued gently, "we should return and wait for her to come home." Again, Ma said nothing, but barely, perhaps only because he was looking for it. She nodded. Ba nodded back at her and quietly took some rice and dropped it into the fishbowl. We'll have to wait for tomorrow to hear the next part of our book, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, Chapter 16. Don't forget to answer the questions that are on the agenda. I'll see you back on Zoom at 12:10.